Hi everyone and welcome to the channel where I'll be giving you a brief review of the EdgeMax router range today. In particular the V3 firmware version, which is currently in release candidate 9. So we will start with version 2, upgrade the device, and then we will briefly skip through all the interfaces. For more information, please check the channel out and watch the V2 version, which might go into more details than in this one. So in the V2 version, we have set up this device, changed the username, gone over all the interfaces, all the basic features, nothing intense. So in that case, we did set up an account on here, so we will be logging into that unit just to resume from there. So the first time you log in, this is what you'll be expected to see. In this case, this is the EdgeRouter 12, and we are currently on 209 hotfix 7. The internet is on ETH9, so keep that in mind. And we are actually currently plugged into a second switch that routes through ETH6. I'll be briefly glancing at that later on. Okay, so let's start with upgrading this device first. So we're just going to bottom left corner, click on the little system tab, scroll down, upload a file. Now we will just find where I have placed the firmware. Okay, so version 3, release candidate 9. Okay, you can just download it from here, and I will leave links in the YouTube video description. Okay, so we'll just hold on a minute. This will upload the content there and reboot the device. Now 9 out of 10 times what will happen here, we will actually get an error message that says app, I failed to upgrade. That is nothing to worry about. You can attempt to redo it again, it won't make any difference. All you will need to do, so here's the error message. All you will need to do is just go OK, restart the device. So we're going to restart the device and click restart. Yes, are you sure? Okay, while I am waiting, I was testing something, so I do have an SPF module plugged into port 11. That's why it's blinking orange, as you can see up there. So I have just unplugged that. I was curious if I just patch internet into 11 and remove 9, does it work as intended? And yes, it does. If you do have firewall, net rules, etc., and they are allocated to that port, you will probably need to adjust it, because a lot of the permissions will be based on port. So that router is currently restarting. Let's just give it a ping. Now, since the second review, which was only a couple of days ago, I have spun up an internal UNMS instance or UISP instance, so I can show you what that looks like. So let's just hold on, this shouldn't take too long. It looks like it has just rebooted and it's powering back on. Let me just grab a cup of coffee. A sip of coffee, I guess. That's what we all do in IT, just drink coffee. All right, I think we are almost there. Yep. Okay, I'm just going to cancel this. Let's just hit refresh on the browser. So what we see here is the UNMS, the EdgeRouter range V3 firmware interface. So we're just going to log in with the account that we have created in the previous video. By default, if this was a fresh device, the username would be UBNT. And one current glitch that I have, if you're on version 3 and log in with UBNT you will be stuck at a screen here forcing you to change the password. And if during the wizard you for some reason choose not to make a new account, after you log off you will not be able to log back into the device. So the UBNT with the new password you set would not be working. Okay, sorry, I briefly, and this is actually internet. As I said, I was just testing some things before. I'm just going to label this back there. Okay, so this is the V3 interface. So I'm going to just check, let me just bring up the details, if hardware offloading has been reset. So hardware offloading, let me just find the link. Okay, so for anybody that's not familiar, I went through over this in more details. These come in two ranges with the MediaTek chip and Cavium. The MediaTek basically have a software switch, less internal routing and networking capabilities. Plus, it's almost as if most of those ports are just bundled into one. So you cannot fully utilize each port as an independent. When the Cavium, generally each port is its independent port that can reach the potential of 1 gig. Okay, I will leave this below so you can review it. Now what I'm curious about is SSH. Oh. Don't update now. Let's just do SH 192.168.1. Oh, that is completely wrong. Now you can use PuTTY for this or anything else. Sorry, while I'm just talking to myself here. What I'm doing currently, so pretty much all the EdgeRouter range does not come with hardware offloading enabled. If it's actually, we can probably just check this way. If hardware offloading is not enabled, what we're going to see is the CPU usage will go to about 80-ish%. So as we can see, the CPU usage is 82%. That means hardware offloading is currently not enabled. Now this device is still fairly capable, cross VLAN, VLAN to internet, network to network, everything. The 1 gig on all these ports is more than enough to keep this device happy even without hardware offloading. But I'll show you the difference. So currently we are utilizing generally about 80%, as you saw. Now let's skip down to, we have the EdgeRouter 12. We're just going to copy this. And again, you can just SSH with PuTTY or anything else that you like. I'm just going to do this. So this last tab, just make sure you go save and commit. Or commit and save. That is saved. Otherwise, what will happen is that will actually not be effective. Okay. Let's just see if that made any difference. Okay, so we are at 3%, same test. Oh, I'm just going to go up a million times. Oh, sorry, this one here. So same test. So usually I'd be expecting about 32% for the same test. There it is, 33. I don't think I've realistically seen it go over 35. Even if we do it in the other direction. I could just add the letters, but I'm too lazy to think about it. Okay, so 31%, 35, oh, that's probably as high as I've seen it go. Now that is in the other direction and we are maxing out the 1 gig interface. Okay, so this hardware offloading is very important. All right, now back to the interface. Now for anybody that's not familiar with the EdgeRouter range, Now in this particular range, it's the EdgeRouter 12. Pretty much beyond the crazy expensive one. This is as high as you'd want to go, unless you have a very niche 10 gig infrastructure, which these days are becoming more common. But for home use, in most cases, you do not need it. Okay, now this would have probably reset most of the settings to factory, so traffic, oh, that is actually weird. That has not reset after the upgrade. That's good to know. So by default, this will be disabled. So all this asks is the packet inspection. It's very brief, similar to the unifier range, so nothing really detailed. You're not gonna get which websites they went to, etc. There's no deeper inspection, no in the middle SSL certificates. It's just basic inspection, so to say. So it's not really that deep, considering it's called deep level. Okay, so this is disabled by default. All you do is flick it on. Now keep in mind, this does have a hardware increased CPU usage. Now with hardware offloading, realistically in this particular device, this makes next to no difference. It's not really visible. I've done numerous performance tests, and if the difference is something like 1%, that's in the higher tiers. Now keep in mind, if you are using any of these devices here, they may suffer greatly if this is enabled. Not a lot, but especially if you need to push internet over 100 megs or closer to the 1000, even though these are capable of 1000, any of these options will just make it come to a crawl. So not recommended. So for these devices, they have their use case. Deep packet inspection is not one of those. Again, some people might say, yep, they use it and they're perfectly fine. That's nice for you. I'm just saying realistically, it has no place on the entry-level units. Okay, now routing this for most people at home, they will probably never skip through it. It has not really changed from V2 to V3. OSPF, same thing. Most of you guys will not see it or use it, so I'm not going to go through over any of these details in detail. Port forwarding, from what I understand, in V3 should be flawless and actually work as intended. In V2, at least in my case, some people said, yep, it works perfectly fine. I did not have that much luck. So I ended up utilizing the firewall and net rules to make everything work that I needed to achieve. In most cases, once you have configured these once, you can just copy the rule set and adjust it to whatever other device you have on the in the house or server or whatever else it may be. Net rules, again, I'm not going to explain how things function. I will just briefly go over each interface that I think some people might want to see. If you did not run the setup wizard, which is the last tab here, which I will go through at the end. If you did not run through this, so some of these things may not be available, and your internet will very likely not work because the firewall rules will not be set and the net rules will not be set. Now this is basically grouping, as it says. If you needed to just bunch up a lot of policies into one and just make a more streamlined setup in your house so you can more easily adjust things. This whole section is basically considered like one, if you ask me. Services, DHCP, again, very basic. View leases. Okay, now my device is already from the first, has been assigned address 66. Okay, leases in the house will just show up. You just click assign and give it an IP address, restart the device, and it will just work. Okay, if you did need to have a manual mapping, you just say new, give it a name, test device, or whatever the device is called, MAC address, IP address, and hit apply. It usually works within a couple of seconds. Now the details tab is probably more interesting for a lot of people. If you use Active Directory and this is your DHCP, You may need to have the internal domain in here, so it will be in a lot of cases like the business plus local in legacy setups. Again, local not recommended these days, so if you are starting off fresh, try not to start with local. Start with anything else you can come up with, not local. If you have a domain name, you are free to use your domain name in here if you do intend to route this internally. DNS is self-explanatory. This is what your devices will be talking to. If this is not the primary DNS, some of the deep level inspection will work worse or not work at all. So usually this is recommended to stay 1.1 or whatever the router is. Otherwise it may not function correctly. Okay, now for some people this last tab might be interesting if they do have a UniFi controller hosted somewhere off-site, or if you are deploying this in a business and you have a central controller for your customers. You would just specify in here the IP address. I'm just making up numbers, okay? And what that will do is any UniFi device that goes online, it will send an inform command to that IP address. Again, now that looks wrong, so I honestly think that IP doesn't exist or it's not usable. This is where you would just specify your IP address ranges, etc. You should have set up the DHCP at the start. Now, as you see, you cannot really edit it here. From memory, I think you will have to make a new one and assign it if you did not want to run the wizard again. Now, if you are starting off, just run the wizard. It's going to be so much easier. Okay, now in this section, V3 has one major add-on, and you may have already spotted it. Is this one here, WireGuard. Now PPTP is basically useless these days. It's just here as a legacy thing. I don't think anybody should be using it. Some people might have a use case. IPsec is in most cases still the go-to because just everything under the sun supports it. If you have used site-to-site, this should all make sense to you. If you're using UniFi to UniFi, you can probably just fill in this, EdgeRouter to EdgeRouter. If you are using EdgeRouter to UniFi, you want to tick this and just make sure that these are the default ones. On the newer devices, they'll just auto detect. On the older devices, you may be limited to some of these and you need to make sure that they match. This looks like it's the default out of the box on most of the UniFi things. Again, I will not show you how this is set up. You can just find tutorials somewhere else. Okay, now the big addition to V3 is WireGuard. Okay, now this can be used as site-to-site, as far as I'm aware, as well as a WireGuard server. Okay, I have not tested this yet. I might test it in the future when it actually gets released, and I have some time to do this, as I am making these videos just in the spare time that I have from time to time, which is not often. Okay, now QoS is probably one of the big reasons some of the people are using the edge routers to begin with. The quality of service is very good. The smart queue is similar to what you see in your UniFi. You have basic queues, which you can configure with a fair degree of flexibility, and you've got advanced queuing, which can basically set up rules, etc. for pretty much everything under the sun. Now this could be very intense and very confusing, and it may not make sense a lot of the time, so I have a feeling Chris from Crosstalk Solutions briefly went over this 7, 8, 9 years ago, very long time ago, which is in most cases not required unless you're using something like a VoIP phone system. Internally, it's all hosted internally, or it's hosted internally and you want to make sure that VoIP gets top priority. Okay, because your YouTube video does not need to be flawless. If it suffers a little bit or buffers a little bit or drops a few frames, it's not the end of the world, where if a phone call drops, you might be losing sales. Okay, now the config tree. Now basically everything you see in the EdgeRouter, every single thing is going to be in the config tree. So you could almost see this as everything you can do in the command prompt, except here you'll be able to click through, visually see what's happening. Okay, so this is just, as you see, with firewall rules. This is the firewall rules, very basic. Okay, so everything that you can do in Unify will be here. I'm not sure if there's some functions you can only do from the command prompt. Probably the case. In some cases, the command prompt is just easier. It's faster than having to click through 600 options to tick a box somewhere. Okay, now I will go through the wizard next. Okay, now we have just run the basic wizard here. We've specified EF9 as the network interface. If you are running this from the get-go, you would just specify your WAN address, enter your static addresses if you have them. If you are using PPPoE, enter it here. Now it is highly recommended to do this here because after the fact switching from DHCP or static to PPPoE is not straightforward, can be a little bit messy. Okay, now if your internet provider requires you to use a VLAN for the uplink to them, here in Australia, some of them have 100, some of them have a 2, particularly in TPG from memory. They use these two being the more common one, but 95% of them don't need anything. Some still use PPPoE, but the rest, majority of them are just DHCP. Here in Australia, we've got the NBN, and it comes in 3 variants. HFC, which is coax. You've got fiber, which is the best one, which is what I've got here. So I have 1000 by 50 for a very good and reasonable price. And then you have, well, technically you have 4. You've got a connection type that uses the phone lines, but it's got a little converter unit here. And then you've got the ones that are basically ADSL on roids, the crappiest of them all. Okay, but let's not whinge about the NBN anymore. By default, if you run this wizard, you will probably see this. You may bridge the network. This is usually what most people will do. Now, some of these options you might not have. If you are using some of the MediaTek devices, you may have limited options, or you might be listing some features. You cannot have multiple LAN networks on those devices. WAN routing internally with them is limited or pretty much useless. A lot of bad things come with those entry-level devices, but again, we have a fair amount of these X's deployed because they are very good, very reliable, and they're very good at what they do. If you need internet less than 100 and you need them to do a job, they will just keep working. Okay, so by default, this is what we've done. We've gone there. We did create a new user because on V3 you will be forced. If you missed it at the start, once you log in the first time in V3, it forces you to change the password, leaves the username as UBNT, but if you log off, the UBNT account will not work and the new password will not work. And I've spent a reasonable amount of time trying to figure out why and what causes it to happen, and I still don't know. Okay, so when you log in, whatever you do, run the wizard first, set an account, and then make the changes later. Okay, enable reporting, that's fine. Again, I'll tick all of this in a second. Now what these devices are very good for is load balancing. Okay, you've got basically load balancing 2 ports, and you can make a 3rd one. Okay, so you've got these 2 options. As you see, these 2 options are very similar. They've got their pros and cons each. Okay, this is the 2nd. I'm not sure why Bitwarden is asking me to log in somewhere. Okay, these options have their pros and cons. You probably need to Google and see what the exact differences are and how you intend to utilize them. As you see, this is bundling internet connection to your LAN. And this, as you see, is basically network to network, and it's bundled. Now, I have a device. I was curious about the switch function, and I will just bring up UNMS. Okay, as I said, I have just made UNMS. I have set up a device, a switch, to see how that will respond. Now I have a second EdgeRouter 12. Okay, what ends up happening is the devices, the default ports, 0 to 8, you can basically make, 0 to 7 become the switch. And in this case, 8, 9, 10, and 11, which are kind of the WAN ports, so to say, they become useless, at least on the release candidate. So I'm not sure if that's going to be fixed. I'm pretty sure that is because the chips that run them are separate. I only did very basic with it to find out if I can reuse some of these devices elsewhere. Okay, now you will always get this because you cannot load this option with when you already have the device configured. Okay, you can read in the background or just Google it. WAN, and then basically multiple LANs. This is what this is. Some people might have a use case. I don't. Now, if you have an Xbox or a PlayStation, or you play a lot of multiplayer games, most computer online games do not need this. Consoles do. You may want to enable UPnP. So you will select the switch as internal if that is what you chose in the basic setup to just bundle them. WAN, EF9, and just apply. So what this will do is it will allow the console to open up particular ports when it needs them in the firewall, allowing the game to be more responsive. You might connect to teammates faster. You might be able to do a lot of things faster. And as those ports are randomized, every time the console gets restarted and you turn on a game, they make change. Now, if you are using anything in the house that might be using conflicting ports that your console might be using, keep that in mind. I have scenarios where UPnP, not on the EdgeRouter range, but in other devices, can open ports and redirect them to the console, and you may have used those ports somewhere else. Okay, now VPN status, that should be explanatory. You will see here the site to sites in general. If you have site to client, it will also show up here. What they've done in this next tab is actually the systems, because a lot of people found it difficult to actually locate this down here. Okay, this little tab, not always obvious that it's there when everything else is in the bar. All that does is brings up that tab. Okay, so it's a good addition. Now in this case, in V3, I have enabled the UNMS. Okay, I've just made an instance so I can show you what that looks like. Okay, this will be basically UNMS. It will back up the device automatically, depending on how you set it. Okay, if we do a stress test, okay, I will just move that out. So you will see our traffic there, 990, 970. Okay, because I'm running through this into my main network. Actually, I'm running through the switch that runs to the EdgeRouter, and I'm still mixing up the traffic. Okay. So UNMS is very basic. You've got the device topology. You're familiar with that. If you click map and you actually did program the address for these devices, it will show you where they are on the map. Now, one good thing is you actually have this remote access section. So even if this was applied as at a customer, as long as it can talk to UNMS, it will actually find a way to get you to the web interface of the device, even though you are remotely, and then you will just log in here natively, and you'll be able to do everything you can on the device. which is very nice. You can manage the interfaces from here, label them as you see fit. Okay, you will just click it, that's internet, give it a name, 123. Okay, some things like PPPoE might be easier to change from here, but if you mess it up, you're going to lock yourself out. Settings, this will just take you to the routing range, okay, which you can see in the main interface, DHCP. Again, you can do a lot of the things you can do in the EdgeRouter there. Services, you guys should know these are on by default. Once you have fully deployed it, I would probably recommend you turn SSH off. If you deploy this in a shared environment, data center or a shared office environment, you will probably have to turn this off, as this will be flooding the network trying to discover Ubiquiti devices. Okay, now manage, this is where you can label the device, okay, transfer it to a site, firmware, if I needed to upgrade or downgrade it, I can just click here and hit apply. Backups, in this case it automates all the backups. You can just restore the backup, download the backup, load it on a different device and just turn them around. If you need to do a speed test remotely, obviously that's amazing. You don't need to log in anything, you don't need to run a VPN. Okay, I'm just gonna cancel that. I've got better things to do. If you for some reason have lost the credentials for the device but it's still on UNMS, as long as you have your vault key, you will be able to show the password. Okay, now I'm just gonna upload the vault key. When you originally set up UISP, you will be given a vault key. You can use that to actually view the password. Okay, maybe I messed something up. Okay, I probably messed something up because I didn't have the vault key when I did all the programming. But you can generate a password, and what that will do is it will push down an updated password to the device. So this is just a brief look at the UNMS. As you can see, the EdgeRouter, the switch, statistics. Okay, now this can go back weeks, months. Now I only deployed this a couple of days ago, so this has next to no traffic. Some of these have only been in here for a day. Okay, very self-explanatory, so that's enough on UNMS. I just thought I'd spin it up to give you guys a better insight. Now this is because I relabeled the device. It does not drop the internet, but it just drops the interface. So as you see up here, it hasn't refreshed yet. Okay, it has not refreshed yet, but anyway, it should relabel this to V3. I think we've covered everything in here. Now the big point here will be WireGuard, how well they make it, how feature rich it will be, what else they may decide to bring into this device. We will have to wait and see. Honestly, this might be later on this year, maybe sometime next year. Very hopeful that on these devices, as they have brought a better, a sleeker design to these ancient devices. Now, to the question, is the EdgeRouter range still useful in 2024? Will this V3 firmware version bring life back into the hardware? In both cases, I say yes. Okay, if you require a device that is, well, for one, secure, as long as you don't do anything stupid. If you want it to be reliable, these are very reliable. I don't think we have had any EdgeRouter device die ever, including the power packs. They just work. If you need very snappy load balancing, okay, these still provide very good load balancing considering they cost next to nothing. If you have a look at the store, the EdgeRouter 12, I think is something like $250-ish. American according to the Unify store. If I Google that right, we'll just have a brief look. So USB wired. So as you can see, these are very popular. They still just work. All of these, I actually have I have a 48 port of these in the shed. I am not currently using it. It is the 500 watt model. Has not been turned on in a long time. Now, as you see, when this is organized by recommended, these older devices, not this one, I've never used that one in my life. These older devices are still on the recommended tab despite Unify having the new range, new switches, new routers. I have not taken any of these newer ones for a spin. I don't have a use case for them yet. I'm sure they're great. As you see, some of these do offer 10 gig. Okay, this is the EdgeRouter 12 that I've got here. The P just has, I think, multiple PoE ports. All of them are PoE. Okay, which one more? Yeah, so this does all PoE, which is probably a very nice device if you are actually needing something that has 24 volt PoE. Now my one has a ridiculous one port pass-through PoE, and it makes no sense because it's on the internet port. I'm sure there is a use case for that. So EdgeRouter range potential, yes. Okay, WireGuard could bring some life into these devices. WireGuard is very quick. These things just work. Generally they don't die. I'm sure you may have had one or two that may have failed in your case, but if they are well taken care of, room is in good shape and not a sauna, humidity is okay, but then all of that stuff will kill any other device as well, so you can't blame the hardware. Okay, these have a lot of potential still. For a newcomer, if you are starting off and you just want to get into networking, this is not for you. I'd probably recommend go with the default Unify range, the cloud gateways, the compact ones. This is very good. The Cloud Gateway Max is probably my go-to if you need it, if you are starting off. This has everything, cameras, networking, and no Wi-Fi, 2.5 gig. Okay, if you are starting off, go with that. Anything more intense where you just need them to work, I would recommend these. The new Unify range is great. We just have them fail too often. The Unify Express, I don't know, I have a feeling about 20% of them fail. The normal Unify Compacts, we haven't had any of them fail. The UDMs, we've had a number of them fail. Some of them within a year, some of them a couple of years. It's just not good enough. They should be more reliable. So for reliability, I would still anytime use this device over the normal Unify range, if that was the priority, reliability and uptime. Okay, now I will probably have to leave this up to you to decide. Does this device still have potential in 2024? Will V3 bring more life into it? I'm hoping it does. We don't have that many of these deployed, but they are very good devices. I think they have a lot of potential. They're whisper quiet, and they're, as you saw, you can configure them as a switch now, or have been able to for a long time. So these two EdgeRouter 12s, I might just turn them into a switch, even though I have plenty of switches around the house everywhere. But look, they don't go to waste. They work. If you need a desk switch, they're very good. 1 gig, no problems. These 10 gig ones are probably overkill for most cases. But I will probably have to leave that up to you. Okay, so I'm going to sign out here. I've shown you a little bit of UNMS, benchmark performance, a little bit of the interface. The rest I will just let you choose if this device works for you. If you have one of these and you want to get rid of it, maybe consider updating to release candidate to the latest release candidate. I will leave the links for the release candidate update in the link below. And have a good day, and I hope to see you here soon.